We had to do a transmission job on this 7410, and we just went through and redid the power quad transmission, and the synchronizers are out on the range box, so we're going to do that next. So I'm going to do a step-by-step, kind of walk you through what needs to be done on a range box on a 74, 72, 10 John Deere. 72, 74, and 75, 10 will all be the same. Except this is just a 4-speed range box. It does not have E range. So it's just A, B, C, D. It does not have E range. First thing we're going to do is take off the 4-wheel drive, mechanical front wheel drive unit on the bottom, and then we'll pull the range box off. You just hooking in bolts here, probably hooking a strap into there as well. So I'll get back to you here. Got a broke free here. Didn't come apart too bad. A little bit of a pain to get it wiggled out, especially while holding the camera. I need to do that with 2 hands. So it split kind of hard, but I discovered taking it off, this bearing fits tight in here, and that took a bit to get pried loose of that. So after I got it started, it wasn't too bad. I had to put a bar on both sides and keep it from rocking sideways. Wasn't hard at all, really. This shaft here looks like, when going back together, that can just be left loose and pushed in later to line up with the spleens back here. So, and then the pinion gear, that'll kind of self-align when you put it together too. So looks pretty simple. There's no wear on that. So I missed him sitting down in the chair washing out the radiator. So that's what the background noise is about. Got this disconnected. Take that spark lever snap ring out. You have to move it all the way one direction to get that done. And then loosen all these bolts and pop this cover off. There's a guide pin here and over there. Those are your 2 main points that it just wants to kind of bind up on. So it took me a little bit to get them pried free, but let's lift this cover off. There we go. And that's what's underneath there. There's our shift levers, and then there's shift cams and shift forks. So this is what was wrong with the transmission to begin with, why we tore it apart. This is the planetary, the 1, 2, 3, 4 planetary. This would control gears number 1, 2, and 3. You have direct drive after that. What happened in here, the pin that holds this gear in slid out. There's actually a little cotter pin that goes in this hole here, which fell out. Don't ask me why. And that allowed this gear to tip like that. And so it chewed up that piece in there. Broke all these gears. The pinion gears. Sorry, planetary gears, yeah. And the pinion gears here, they're right against, they were all chewed up as well. And then this is that's the planetary carrier, this is the planetary ring gear, and it busted it all up too. So we had to change all these parts, and then that was pretty much it. There was one disc that had some metal go through it and caused a bunch of damage too. But that's the reason why we're here and why I decided to go a little farther and just change the synchronizers. There's nothing wrong with the transmission. I'm just going to change the synchronizer pads because it was grinding going into some gears. There's 2 springs and detent balls, and they go down in these 2 holes right here for these shafts. Pull them out and get a small magnet or a screwdriver with a magnet on it and pull them out of there, so that when you slide these out the front side, they won't fall down and you'll lose them. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to loosen these up and slide those shafts out so we can get these shift forks out of there. Alright, so I took out the set screws, and looking down in there, those holes do not line up, but looks to me like it's set kind of right there in the middle of those 2 holes. So I guess we'll just kind of try to set it back where it was before. I'm guessing I'll be able to see a little bit of a discoloration where this was sitting when I take it off. We'll just have to find out. If not, we can always readjust the lever with the adjustments. So anyway, I'm going to knock these pins out. They should come out either way. I'm going to put them, that one this way, and I'm not sure yet. See how they come out. Okay, so I got this big nut off here. I finally found a socket big enough to do it. I was going to actually use a cold chisel on a pneumatic hammer and do it, but I did find a socket big enough then. So I put a mark right there and on the shaft to measure the rounds coming off. I'm going to look at the book too and see once what it says to tighten it up to, and we'll hopefully get it right. But I thought this is for extra security. I like to do this. I turned that thing off 9 1/4 turns, because at 1/4 I could just slip it off. So going back together, right whenever it starts grabbing, that's the beginning of 9 1/4. Anyway, that's how I did it. Maybe you have a better idea. I'll also look at the book, and I'll give what the book says to tighten it up to as well, just in case you guys need it. To hold the shaft when I was taking that nut off, I just slipped this spring out, holding the park lever up. That allowed it to drop down, and then I actually had help, and somebody else put a bar on there and held that park lever down to engage it, to hold that from turning. There's probably other ways to do it too, but that was the simplest one I could find. Okay, so we got the gears out here. First thing is your bearing. There's a mess of shims in between the bearing and that first plate. And then I've just got them stacked up here. As we go back, and there's the first set of synchronizers. The synchronizer is bad, which is why I'm fixing this tranny. Otherwise it's good. Can't really see it. Anyway, that's a tapered synchronizer there. And it fits in on a tapered shaft right there. Got it backwards here. And that is being allowed to go way too far up against the gear. So there's no grip there. You can just turn that. The new one, slide the new one on there, and it doesn't even get there, and you can't turn it anymore. It's stuck. So that is a good one where it's gripping tight. That's a tapered gear there, and your synchronizer is also tapered. To the video, you just really can't see that, but anyway, so whenever your gear pushes up against those little togs there, that will engage your synchronizer to line your gears. So I'm going to pull that shaft the rest of the way out and stack them up with that, and then we're going to do the next set as well. Okay, this next shaft would come out with that bolt and the tab that sticks over here. Hold that in place. Got a mark there. I'm going to turn that. I'm just going to use a punch to loosen it. And I'm going to count the rounds it comes out. And then wherever that mark stops, where it comes free, I'm going to mark the side as well to make sure I understand exactly how many turns it was. Okay, so I went 9 and almost a half turns loose. I'm going to mark that right there on that casting there. So I was able to get the whole shaft wiggled out of that housing as one unit, but the top bearing did not want to slide off very easy. There's a snap ring right there. Take the snap ring off, and that bearing, I was trying to beat it out and it wasn't working. Looks like the bearing has a little catch right there anyway, so it has to seat fully, but yet it also doesn't come off very easily. So I brought it over here to the press and I pressed it out of there. I was very careful. I put a bucket down here just in case it dropped. Didn't want to hit the bearing, the bottom bearing on the floor. So now I'm going to go ahead and take all these top gears off and change the two synchronizers and put it all back together. I'll probably use it to press again to push the bearing back on just to make sure I have it seated properly. Alright, got this shaft in here, and trust me, it's not fun. There is the shift collar that needs to go in at the same time you're putting that shaft in, which makes it difficult to do. So end play for these two shafts, if you're measuring end play, this one here is obviously adjustable with the nut. That's supposed to be between 5 and 30 thousandths of end play. You have to put a dial gauge on here and measure the end play. I didn't do that because I just counted the rounds and I had it marked here. You can't really see that very well. Anyway, I got it marked there, and I'm going to put it right back to where it was. This one here, again, 5 to 30 thousandths of end play when it's tight. There is shems behind that bearing, and so I didn't change anything. I put it all back together the way it was. I didn't measure the end play. This nut is supposed to be tightened down to 400 foot-pounds, or like 405, I think it is. I'm going to use an impact and give it some pretty good goose and call it good. Otherwise I would have just going to count rounds. It went in the exact amount of rounds it should have to get in there and be tight. They said not to push the bearing cone on with the nut. I did. I don't know, maybe I did it wrong. Yeah, I just didn't really feel like beating it on there with nobody holding their shaft and all that. So anyway, pretty straightforward as far as that goes. Make sure you don't damage this. If you do, you'll have to get a new one of that, because the backside of your transmission has a rubber that seals up against that to give that lubrication. Get a new nut. That way you don't have to worry about the notches. You can just tighten it up wherever it gets tight at. There's also, as you're going together, I didn't discover this until it was too late, but there's two balls in your shift rods. Well, you can't see them at all there, but there's a hole. You can kind of see it right up in there. There you can see it. That hole between the two shift forks, or the two shift rods, that hole is supposed to have two BBs in it. And you can see there's another hole way in there. This side has holes in it as well. This is for D range, or I'm sorry, E range. If you had an E range 40 kilometers per minute per hour transmission, that would have another shift rod in it there. Because I don't have that, they would have, I want to say, 4 more balls in these two holes here. I just have the 2 balls on this hole on this end of it. And what that does, that does not allow you to get 2 gears at the same time, because those shift balls are contacting right in there. And it has to slide one way for the other one to move past. That way they both can't go at the same time. Anyway, so I'm going to torque these down, put my shift collars back in place, tighten the nuts down. Book says for these here, tighten down, what is it, 1 turn back and forth until you get them tight. Obviously put Loctite on them again. They had this shaft Loctited as well, or maybe it was just Loctite from the set screw, I'm not sure, but because it's not a center deal, what they, let's see, they wanted to make sure that your synchronizers were centered down in there. Synchronizers needed to be centered on that shift color to make sure they weren't spinning one on the other synchronizer, I guess. But yeah, as you go down with that, because they're tapered, it's going to find center. And I think, well, I'll let you know how it goes together, I guess, because it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for me. Okay, well, I got those balls in there. And that one there, they just go between the two shafts. Now I'm just ready to push those together, see how they line up. Okay, I got all this back together. Put the cover on. It's not too difficult because you can see up in here with the light, and you can get those shift forks right in place on the shifting rails. And I just snugged it down a little bit with a few bolts, and I went through all the gears and made sure everything turned freely and shifted nice. And I also made sure that you couldn't move both of these at the same time, because one has to be in neutral for the other one to move, because that's what these two balls over here we talked about were doing. So you got to make sure that you can't jam it in two gears at once. It's very important, or you'll ruin your transmission. So anyway, I'm ready now to tip it up, and we're going to put it back on the tractor. Alright, we got the range box back on. It went together really smoothly. Just put some anaerobic sealer on the back there, and then again on the bottom for the mechanical front wheel drive box. The clutch is in there. While you have that off, go ahead and change the seals. I didn't do a video on that, I probably should have, but it's really simple. You take this front piece off, lay the gear case on its back, so it's resting back here, and then that shaft pulls straight up after you have this bearing cap. The bearing's held in with this with some shims. So there's a seal. Seals are easy to change. And take these 4 bolts out, pop that off, and with it on up on end, you slide that shaft straight out, and there's 4 sealing rings in there. 2 of them are steel, they're in the back side. Then 2 of them are ceramic rubber kind of thing. Those 2 rubber ones you need to change. The steel ones, if they're bad, change them, but most likely they're not going to be bad. But the 2 rubber ones, even if they're good, even if it's working, you're right there anyway. If you have this off, change it. It's too easy to change, to not do it and have to do it a year later. So anyway, I'm not going to do any more for a video on this. There's other videos that have the transmission, the power shift transmission descripted on it pretty good. So I'm going to put that on. We'll slide the tractor together and we'll get her going, but I'm not going to inform you all that. You guys can figure that out somewhere else. There's other videos that use that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope this was informative for you.